Good afternoon, everyone. I am Margot Shaw. I am the editor-in-chief of Flower Magazine, and because of the world that we live in today, we are on the road virtually talking to all sorts of people, flower friends, tastemakers, writers, editors, designers, and authors. And today, it is my good fortune to be speaking with someone who's all those things and then some, and it's Frances Schultz. And Frances, as you see in the background, is in a mountainous area of California, Los Olivos at Rancho La Zaca. Did I get that right?
You got it.
And Frances is really the total package. She is a writer, editor.
Wait, my husband, are you listening to this?
Yeah, get him in here. She is a designer, interior designer, chef, hostess extraordinaire, painter. Go to Instagram and look at her watercolors. They are delicious, and you will want everything. So she's really the whole package. But most importantly, where I'm concerned, she is our new West Coast contributing editor for Flower, and she will be in our next issue, July, August. So stay tuned for that. But today I want to talk to Frances about her new book and other things. But because she's not able to be out on a book tour, obviously, right now, we are trying to get the word out about this fabulous compendium of cooking and decorating and for parties and flowering. And Frances, tell us about your book, if you don't mind.
Well, it's called California Cooking in Southern Style. It's kind of hard to show on the green screen, but that turned out pretty well, didn't it? You can see I've blacked out the tooth here and done a few other things.
Wait, I can't see that. Can you zoom in?
You have to get really close there.
Were you in a bar fight? Or
well, you know, we have a cowboy bar here in San Ynez just next door, and I do go in there sometimes and get in fights, and sometimes things happen. Teeth fall.
They do.
Yeah. There could, by the end of quarantine, there could be a few more missing. Who knows?
Who knows? Anything's possible.
But I have so many, it doesn't really hurt when I lose.
I know. You can spare one or two.
Anyway, California Cooking in Southern Style, and it's called that because I am a transplanted Southerner here to the San Ynez Valley of California, which is a stone's throw from Santa Barbara, and with beautiful year-round weather, almost year-round weather, and so we can grow so many fresh, beautiful things, and our cooking is, because California is such a melting pot of cultures and people, and California cooking, I think, is a little bit of everything. And then the Southern style aspect that I bring to it is my sense of Southern hospitality, and I hope graciousness and warmth. And just want to say, I'm not a chef, I'm just a cook. I did collaborate with the chef, Stephanie Valentine, for the recipes in this book. And I'm not really a designer, I'm just an enthusiast. So I just want to, all the designers and chefs
I stand corrected. And aren't you humble? But as someone who has been
to be humble about
in one of your houses, which would be Bee Cottage, which is now gone the way of all flesh, but when you live there, and I toured Bee Cottage, if you're not a designer, I don't know who is. So I just want to say that. I'm not trying to, blow smoke, but that's just true.
I did have a lot of help though with that house. I had help from Tom Samet and other designer friends.
Tom's great, but it's very you. And that book is, for those of you who've not read Frances's book about Bee Cottage, I highly recommend. I don't know the specific title. What is it?
The Bee Cottage Story. How I made a muddle of things and decorated my way back to happiness.
So see, you did decorate. There you go. Nailed. Okay. All right. All that false modesty. Frances. So keep going about, I love the whole concept of the mix of your translating your Southernness to the West, and just that whole mishmash of cultures that's already there. And then you add that last dollop, of which to me, of course, is the most important, the Southern hospitality component. So talk more about that.
Well, it is nice and slightly novel out here. I mean, one encounters Southerners, of course, everywhere in the world, but so many more on the East Coast than, of course, than here. Because the South being heaven, why would you leave and move to California? But what I've loved about this book is, I mean, you said it, mishmash, which is not a very elegant word, but it certainly does cover a lot of things. And I'm sort of leafing through it as I'm talking to you. But I think most people, when they entertain, when we get back to when we can entertain in real life and gather. And don't we know what a privilege that is now?
Yeah, we do.
And ever, don't we?
Yeah.
So I'm so glad to have this book as a testament to that sentiment and the importance of gathering beyond pretty pictures and good food, which are important, but to this really kind of sacred ritual of gathering friends and family around a table. It is to hold a sacred space for each other, for ourselves, for these gifts of bread and wine. It's a kind of communion, isn't it? And for the gifts of the earth and of nature, it is sacred. So there's that at the very bottom and at the very top, and in between we have recipes with everything from pecan pie to Southwestern Mexican inspired food to Italian inspired food. And it's all, my real thing was to make the recipes accessible and super reliable. And 99% of the ingredients you can get at the Piggly Wiggly in Tarboro, which is my little hometown where I'm from in North Carolina. Because, I mean, I read a recipe and it calls for something I can't even pronounce, let alone figure out where to buy, although the internet has changed that. But still, I'm lazy. I want to be able to get it at the Piggly Wiggly in Tarboro, and so do a lot of people. So those were sort of my criteria for the recipes, and they had to just taste really, really good. This chef, Stephanie Valentine, is so gifted, and she has a resume a mile long and credentials as wide as in Mississippi, and they are all good. Anyway, so there, I have blown my own horn, hadn't I? But I feel like on the one hand, it seems frivolous to have a book about parties and entertaining, but on the other hand, what is more important
Not
than
at all.
gathering and food and hospitality?
Yes. No, I love what you said about sacred space. I remember reading somewhere a while ago that back in the first century, the time of Jesus, that when someone invited him over for dinner, that was not just, oh, hey, y'all come have dinner and we'll have drinks and then, write me a thank you note. It was, I want you in my life. It was, I am bringing you into my home. I am trusting you with my family. What was that? Do you hear that?
I've heard a little something. Do
It
you have
sounds like a pig snorting.
It was kind of funny. I don't know.
Pigs out there on the farm.
Has that pig got loose in here again? Where is it? I don't know.
Okay.
It is a ranch here, but I haven't seen any pigs lately.
Okay. Oh, well, good. Phew. Okay. Well, meanwhile, back to the sacredness of entertaining people in your home. I remember I had a dinner party for a cousin who's an artist, and there was a guest. It was before an opening. There was a guest there who walked through my house and was just perusing and staring and studying paintings and books and fabric, and picking up china and looking at the bottom. I mean, just very sort of nosy, frankly. But and I didn't know him, so at the end, he came up to me and he said, I think that houses and parties tell more about people than anything else, and I love your house, and this is a great party. So I just always remembered that, and I think that's so true today, that when we invite people in for a meal, it's a gift of ourselves.
Well,
So that
it is. And it doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter if it's pizza on paper plates or caviar on porcelain. Doesn't matter what it is. People are just happy to be invited and happy not to have to do it themselves, frankly.
yes.
But that gave me chills what you said about your visitor. And then I don't know, picking up things and looking on the bottom to see the provenance might be a bridge too far, but on the other hand, he was curious and
He
appreciative.
was.
And I think that's so lovely, and I could not agree more. And that is, I finally have let go in my life. And by the way, isn't this a great time to let go of ideas, relationships, practices, habits, things that do not serve us? And I'm not just recently letting go of this, but one thing I did learn to let go of was this idea that houses and parties, to go back to this theme, are frivolous, and that decorating is superficial and doesn't matter. Nothing is a more honest, soulful expression of who we are. And when we create joy and authenticity in the way that we entertain friends and strangers, and in the way that we create our environments, we're expressing our souls and who and what we are and why it's important. And what the world needs is people who understand how to express themselves honestly and beautifully. Imagine if we were a world full of beings who were doing that and not worried about thinking about they should be doing something else more important or different. Or, anyway, I'm getting a little esoteric and spiritual.
No. Get carried away. I love it. No, you know what? We're here to hear you, Frances, and to get to know you. And so whatever that looks like, I don't know anybody that has more to say than you, and I'll just say that. And I lifted your quote about the barn, and I've gotten a lot of positive feedback about that. So veering back to where we are today, yes, hashtag beauty matters. It always does. It's life-giving. And but today, do you want to talk a little bit about that haiku that I lifted from you? Because it's the watchword for me in the life in the time of Corona.
And which one is it? What is it?
My barn having burned down, I can see the moon.
The barn has burned down.
That's lifted from your blog, and everybody thinks I'm so smart,
right,
and poetic.
Yeah. I didn't write it, but some ancient, I think, Japanese philosopher or someone. But something about the barn has burned down, and now I can see the moon.
Yeah.
We all have, our barns are burning down all around us, aren't they? And I think some of us don't realize we can see the moon because maybe we don't know where to look. But we certainly can see life and experience it. We're seeing our lives and experiencing our reality from moment to moment in a way that was very different from this time last year, or even last quarter. And what that gives us, what that begs us to do is to let go of thinking. We can never control things, but we think we can.
Yeah, the illusion.
Yes, and of course the Buddhists say everything's an illusion, but we can let go of this notion that we must control everything, because that is absolutely an illusion. And when we are experiencing our lives from moment to moment to moment, we can create what that experience is. And that sounds woo-woo, but it is absolutely true. And sayings don't get to be cliches for no reason. They become cliches because they're true. And the most practical iteration of that concept is necessity is the mother of invention.
Mhm.
I
Very
mean,
prosaic, but very true.
nothing helps you figure out how to put a fire out faster than having your pants on fire.
Wha-
And, you know, in a way, all our pants are on fire. They're on fire, but they're on a very slow burn. So now what are we going to do? How are we going to create solutions for what it's going to be like to live on planet Earth going forward? But I don't think people can watch, you know, people who are a lot smarter and more articulate talk about these subjects than I. But I mean, maybe they want maybe people want entertaining tips and recipe ideas, and I don't know.
They do. Of course they do. And we're going to talk about that. But I think, as I said earlier, not to be about me, because this is not about me, but the book that I did with Rizzoli is in its 5th printing, and I think it's because it's about people. It's not just pretty pictures.
Yeah.
And you're in it, and Bee Cottage, and it's really very personal. And I mean, people have loved it because of that, and the beauty and the style and all the tips and all that. But there's a reason People magazine is still the most successful magazine in the world. We want to know about each other. So please, I mean, no, I want to know about Tarboro and things that you gleaned as a young Tarborian. About, you know, what was your mother a great hostess? I mean, what were you drinking at the trough of, you know, the Southern hospitality? Young, where does all
My
this?
mother was a great hostess. She was a great hostess and a great character. She was 6 feet tall, brunette, looked like a movie star. I mean, when the ambulance came to pick her up the night before she died, we didn't know that was what was going to happen, but see, we don't know. But I mean, she put on lipstick and lied to him about her age. I mean, still. So she was divine. And I do have one quote from her in my book, which says, "Too many hors d'oeuvres are a sign of insecurity."
Ooh.
And I'm pretty sure she said that is because she didn't really have time to fool with hors d'oeuvres, or didn't want to take the time. But anyway, she made that little truism out of it and decided, well, that was the way it was. And she fixed the most beautiful flowers, and we had the most beautiful dining room in our old family house, which was in our family for 100 years. It no longer is, but it was such a wonderful old house, an old, sort of fine, old, plain but fine federal house in Tarboro, right in the middle of town. But anyway, where was I going with that? She did the most beautiful flowers. She could stick a coat hanger in the ground and it would grow. And I don't have that. I can arrange flowers, but I don't have the green thumb that she had. But anyway, one time we had Sheila, and you flower readers will probably know who Sheila McQueen is. She was this grand English artiste when it came to flower arranging.
The grande dame for sure.
Yeah. Yes. And anyway, a bunch of ladies from Tarboro, she came to Tarboro. And I mean, this is like the queen coming, you know, and
better.
She, in the minds of some, absolutely.
Yeah.
And my mother, all her friends were going, and she didn't go. And I said, why aren't you going to Sheila McQueen? Of course, I was probably 18. I didn't even know she was, you know. I said, well, why aren't you going with her? She said, I don't need to.
Oh, okay. Well, confident.
Well, okay, but she kind of didn't. I mean, she couldn't have done these grand, you know, installations or anything. But anyway, yeah, she was something else. But she was funny and down to earth, and she didn't you know, couldn't stand pretension, and yet she was quite proper and did things the right way. And I learned from her. And she was a very good cook. You know, in Tarboro in the 1960s and 70s, nowhere. I mean, people weren't making things with, you know, basil. I mean, I was like, what?
Yeah. And restaurants? Did you have restaurants?
We
And
had Mama's Pizza and Lloyd's, which turned into the barbecue place.
okay,
Hmm.
that sounds like Birmingham back in the
It
day.
was a lot. It was a lot. No, Birmingham is Paris compared to Tarboro, but they had a supper club in Tarboro,
Mhm.
and Tarboro was, this was back in the day where people didn't want to people did cook and entertain all the time because there were no options. I mean, that was where you wouldn't go out to dinner, you went to somebody's house.
Right.
And they were very sort of guarded about their recipes. I mean, some people were, not everybody.
Right.
But they'd give the recipe, but they would change one thing. So Betty Lou's didn't taste
Uh-huh.
quite like
No,
Annie Sue's. But but um
perverse, but yeah.
but she was a good cook. And she taught me, I didn't always listen, but she taught me not to mess with it. She said, no, this recipe is good like it is. Don't mess with it.
Mm-hmm.
I still would occasionally.
Words to cook by. Well, of course she did, because you're a rebel. But so that's where a lot of this sprang from with you. And so her parties were
We're
more informal, were silver, china, or what was
Yeah,
your
I mean,
style?
always silver.
Yeah,
Yeah, almost always silver and china.
good.
I mean, my fondest memories were Thanksgiving, which we kind of alternated with my aunt and uncle, and Christmas Eve. And Christmas Eve we always had at our house, and then Christmas Day lunch we would have at our aunt and uncle's house. But Christmas Eve, the house was decorated with Smilax on every mantle,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean, I thought it was so grand and sort of, I mean, bordering on opulent. I just thought it was, I mean, even growing up in the middle of it, I just thought it was so beautiful. And I mean, it's funny to look back at these pictures and you think, oh, that was so fancy. And then you look at things now that really are fancy and grand. They were nowhere near that. I mean, partly because they look dated, but I mean, I look back at these things I experienced growing up, which were in fact lovely and wonderful. But I mean, when I moved to New York and it put a whole new spin on what grand and opulent and all that was, and it does not in any way diminish my experience and my memory. But I thought, well, you might not have been quite as fancy as you thought you were.
Different. Let's say different. How about that?
No, that's what I mean. Wasn't as fancy as I thought I was.
Fancy.
Now I don't think I'm fancy at all.
Well, no, I don't think you are. But I think your mother, her aphorism about hors d'oeuvres, and too many hors d'oeuvres being a sign of insecurity. I think that's such a good point, because to entertain again is to really reveal and share who you are. And nobody makes 5 different complicated hors d'oeuvres on a daily basis or even on a regular basis. And so why would you do that when you have your friends over for dinner? Also, as Alex Hitz says, it spoils the main event. He doesn't even serve hors d'oeuvres.
I agree. No, I'm all about, we do peanuts, and I agree with Alex on almost everything. I think he's so cute and smart and fun and funny. And I loved your piece you did with him. But my go-tos are peanuts, potato chips, pickled okra, sometimes roasted pecans. I mean, not all at once, but 1 or 2 of those together, or just one by itself. Albert Hadley put a bag of potato chips in a bowl and put it on the table, and that was that. And there's something, popcorn is also very popular.
Yeah.
To me, there's something very sort of chic and confident about that. I love that, and sort of old and old school and waspy. I think it's great. You don't have anything to prove.
And delicious.
I mean, and good, exactly.
Better than a potato chip.
Exactly.
Well, and my go-tos here always have been, since I first started having dinner parties and dinner guests, is cheese straws.
Yep, we have those too. That's right.
And
they're exotic here in Southern California.
Oh, they really? I'll send you some. I'll send you some. But you can get everything now. You can get everything you want. Okay, so tell us about what you've been doing through these last few weeks, what does a day in the life of Frances Schultz at Los Olivos look like? I'm sorry, I did see your virtual dinner party.
I know that was right at the beginning. That seems like 100
Yes,
years ago.
yes, before we got tired of, thinking of creative ways to
And all that. I know.
use our time. Yeah.
And I wouldn't have done that because I'm lazy. I wouldn't have done that, but I had prepared this table and staged everything for a television segment that was then later postponed indefinitely. When I'm here at the ranch, I mean, my routine, I work at home as a writer and as a speaker, I travel, but I have to say I have not missed all that frantic traveling. And I ask myself, is that going to be one of the things that I let go, and am I going to let go some of these speaking engagements and some of these book promotion travel things? I mean, there's a lot that's good about them and beneficial, but I've so loved this time at home. And so when I'm here, I go back and forth between New York, but I've been here since the 6th of May. March. What month is it again? But my husband and I both, he's semi-retired. We both are here at home and work at home. And we have separate offices, and we kind of like pass in the hall during the day. Hey, and that's so that, and we're 8 miles from the nearest post office. So we're somewhat isolated and used to being, on our own. We do entertain a lot. Obviously, we have not been doing that, but I'm taking, I'm no less programmed than I normally am. I like to paint, so I go to my studio. I'm taking several courses online, one through my church, one through Martha Beck, who is a life coach. I'm taking her Wayfinder life coaching training, which is a major commitment. It's a 9-month, once a week course with notebooks and reading and practice sessions and all this stuff. Not that I want to be a life coach, but I just thought the insight and the skills from that would be great to know. I don't know where it's going to take me. And then I'm taking a drawing course through one of my painting teachers, and that's been interesting. And then I'm taking another course with Martha Beck on sort of surfing the tsunami, what to do when everything falls apart and you find yourself, in the path of this great wave of change. How do you surf it rather than be engulfed by it? So
great image. I
am actually having a ball doing this. And I am doing what I can to, I'm volunteer 3 days a week for our community kitchen food relief program here. And, one feels like one could do more, but we're lucky where we are that we've had very few cases. I mean, this is kind of one of those places where, people are thinking, do we really need to be treated like people are treated in New York or LA? Do we need to have the same standards applied here? And because we've been but anyway, things are starting to loosen up everywhere. But so that is a long answer to a short question, but I'm such a student, and then I studied French and Spanish on Babbel. So I've loved really being able to kind of sink into those things that I love doing. I mean, I feel very spoiled, and then of course I write the odd article for my blog or for Flower magazine or for somebody. So I'm still doing a bit of that. And that's, that keeps my hand in writing. I have some other writing projects going on. So I mean, I'm kind of in heaven on the one hand. I feel kind of guilty about saying that, but not really.
No, don't. I think we all, this is a very mixed blessing. It's terrible, it's tragic, and not to get too deep into it, but we are having to look at our lives and look at our priorities and look at what that barn was that burned down, because it was really keeping us, a lot of us, from the beauty of the moon and whatever that is in each individual life. But what I love about what you've been saying, Frances, is that everything that you've done since we've been in Q-Town is learning. And that's so, that's something you didn't maybe get from your mom, who said, no, I don't need to go to Sheila McQueen. I'm sure she probably didn't, as you said, but you're voracious and you're soaking things up and you're always learning and you're painting and you're on the what is the Rio in Spain?
The Camino de Santiago, which I would have been on last week.
Right. And I will be in France next week.
Yeah, same here. Really?
Yeah.
Oh, me too.
Yeah. So
well, here we are.
Here we are. Well, we're in okay shape, and I think that I'm just so grateful that you had this time to spend with me and our followers. And I got see by the clock on the wall and my text from our media manager that we got to go. So I want to thank you again for this time, and thank you for wanting to be our West Coast contributor. We look forward to great things from you from that part of the world. Look, y'all, look at where she is.
Thank you. I know. Isn't it? Yeah. That's called Grass Mountain. It's not always green. It's usually brown, but this spring it's been green because we've had rain.
Well, I know we've had rain too, and everything's very lush, and it feels Edenic almost, and yet meanwhile, it's this. Anyway, we won't get into that because we got to go. But y'all,
so many things we could get into.
I know we can get into some trouble. Y'all, please, if you don't do anything else today or tonight or tomorrow, buy this book. Get the book.
Oh, and I'll send you a book plate if you email me.
Yes, and because
I can personalize it for you.
It's rich. It's a patchwork of wonderful ideas, and it's not just recipes. It's tables and flowers and Frances, and so anyway, can't recommend it enough. And y'all be safe, be well, God bless, and Frances, we'll see you next time.